Giant steps are what you take. Write your story from the perspective of a side character. Giant steps are what you take on July 20, 1968, when Commander Neil Armstrong stepped out of the lunar module Eagle and stepped onto the moon and said the iconic words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The people on Earth held their breaths because they could not quite believe that at last a human being had actually walked on the moon. J. Patrick Lewis, poem, First Men on the Moon, celebrated the landing on the Eagle. These are the first 3 verses. That afternoon in mid-July, 2 pilgrims watched from distant space the moon ballooning in the sky. They rose to meet it face to face. Their spidery spaceship, Eagle, dropped down gently on the lunar sand. And when the module's engine stopped, rapt silence fell across the land. The first man down the ladder, Neil, spoke words that we remember now, one small step. It made us feel as if we were there too, somehow. When Buzz Aldrin climbed out of the lunar module and joined Neil. This is the conversation they had. Aldrin's first words were, "Beautiful view," and Neil Armstrong replied, "Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here." Buzz Aldrin replied, "Magnificent desolation." They set about collecting the samples and carrying out tasks they were given to do, and they took many photographs of the lunar surfaces. Neil and Buzz roamed around the strange territory in their white spacesuits, which were made of non-flammable material. It was called beta cloth, and it was a Teflon-coated fiberglass. They wore special gloves and gold-coated visors. There is a lot of folklore about the moon, for example that there is a man in the moon and that it is made of cheese. But by the time Apollo 11 was launched, it was unanimously accepted that there were no lifeforms on the moon. That was the stuff of fiction. In his novel, The First Men in the Moon, H.G. Wells told the story of 2 men making a journey to the moon. Mr. Bedford was a businessman and the scientist was called Mr. Cavor. The 2 men discover that in fact the moon is inhabited by extraterrestrial creatures known as Selenites. In this amazing story, Cavor is held captive by the Selenites and Bedford returns to Earth. Cavor teaches 2 of them English and tells them about life on Earth and how much war and violence defines human society. When Bedford returns to Earth, Bedford begins to question his identity and asks, "If I am not Bedford, what am I?" He then says, "Do you know I had an idea that really I was something quite outside not only the world, but all worlds, and out of space and time, and that this poor Bedford was just a peephole through which I looked at life." Of course, Neil and Buzz never encountered any extraterrestrial creatures when they were exploring the moon in July 1969. But what if there really were extraterrestrials on the moon, and if they were watching the 2 astronauts and were making notes and observing them? What would they have thought of the 2 men and their cumbersome pressurized white suits and their big moon boots? It was a very stressful environment for the astronauts, because the temperature in the moon is over 200 Fahrenheit and the gravity is only 1/6 that of the Earth. What if one of them had written an account of what he witnessed and we on Earth were able to read it? What if the account was written in the first person? Bertil Romberg stresses the importance of the I point of view as it binds the reader more tightly to the fiction. It might read something like this: "My name is Maka and I am from the Mopassan tribe. Our people have lived on the moon for thousands of years. We are a peaceful community and we live on a plant which grows deep in the craters. We live quite a simple life. We are aware that there are other planets, but we have never visited them or had any communication with them, and no one has communicated with us or has visited our planet, until this morning." And these 2 men climbed out of the lunar module and began walking around and exploring. They seemed to set up a fixed camera and were probably transmitting their discoveries back to their own planet. They were obviously on some kind of mission. I wondered what their planet was like and also why they had decided to explore the moon. Were they trying to colonize our planet? Were their intentions honorable? The 2 men planted a flag, with stars and stripes on it. I wondered what they looked like under those bulky suits. Maybe their planet was too overcrowded and they were hoping to give their inhabitants the opportunity on moving to the moon. But how would they survive and what would they eat? The 2 men have brought their own oxygen and obviously the temperature is unbearable for them. At the same time, I reckon that the ingenuity and resourcefulness that brought them here meant that they must have very clever engineers who.
Beauty for ashes, dry lightning cracks the brooding sky, pointing sharp fingers at parched earth. A tiny spark, skipping to a clump of scrubby, desiccated vegetation, ignites the tip of a woody stem, transforming drab, grayish-brown to deep, glowing orange. The pungent odor hanging in the air is sweet, with a tang of metallic sharpness. ############################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################### She set two plain stoneware mugs carefully on the railing and moved in close to her husband. taking in the panoramic view. And the fresh air smells wonderful, Dean nodded, picked up a mug, and slurped the steaming coffee, heat lightning over there a moment ago. He gestured with his free hand, see? Where the sky is darker. Dean was a recently retired firefighter, forced to give up his career due to injury. Now that he had recovered enough to become a little restless, Bonnie had arranged this getaway at a unique, rustic accommodation, a recently decommissioned fire watchtower overlooking the alpine forest. He would enjoy it, she thought, when she had reserved the week, trout fishing in a nearby stream, nature photography, or just standing on the narrow balcony, scanning the surrounding area with his prized vintage military binoculars. She would go along on the fishing expeditions and nature hikes, nothing too strenuous, because he was not fully recovered. She would finish the baby sweater she was knitting for their first grandchild, yet unborn. She would, perhaps, chronicle their stay on a series of postcards to their grown children. A distant rumble brought her back to the moment. Do you think there will be a storm? She asked, a bit nervously. It doesn't look like rain, he replied, but there may be a few more. Before he had finished speaking, crack. Boom, a flash of blue-tinged lightning interrupted, illuminating the sky. Soon it was followed by a loud drum roll of thunder that shook the small elevated cabin. Get inside, he commanded, grabbing her upper arm and pulling her with him to the door. Hashtag 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 hashtag. The smoldering spur burns, unremarked, down to the main stalk. What little moisture the plant contains is lapped up, emitting small hisses and squeals as it is swallowed. The fire, ever hungry, consumes an entire cluster of lilac blossom ceanothus, and is not satiated. Hashtag 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 hashtag. Oh, the coffee. Bonnie realized. It's still out there, can't go outside right now. Too risky. Are there more mugs? Just 2 more, use them. She busied herself pouring the remainder of the coffee. Everything in the watchtower was utilitarian. The tiny kitchenette, equipped with the smallest of sinks, housed a propane camp stove and a refrigerator the size of a large cooler. A wooden fruit crate, whose vintage label advertised California peaches, served as a cupboard. That was it. Dean stood before one of the large windows, training the binoculars in the direction of the flash. Crack, boom, less than a mile away, he noted. Bonnie could hear excitement in his voice as, for the second time. She carried 2 mugs across the room. Here's your coffee, set it on the windowsill. Thank you. He stood intent, elbows tucked tightly to his sides and binoculars pressed to his face, watching fire. Her skin prickled, whether at his abrupt interjection or from the electrically charged air, she didn't know. Hashtag 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 hashtag. Scrub jays, issuing staccato screeches, tell of danger as they take wing. Flickers and tanagers follow, rising in bright bursts of color. Other creatures heed the warnings. Fleeing as heat rises and flames lick Arctostaphylos, the manzanita. Chattering squirrels bound away, lithe bodies rippling as they retreat, while scaly lizards scurry erratically across sunbaked earth. Hashtag 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 hashtag. Bonnie's hand went to her throat, feeling her wildly hammering pulse. Oh, what are we going to do? What if we're trapped here? We shouldn't have come. Dean, already halfway across the tiny room, gave her a reassuring smile as he grabbed the emergency radio. We'll be fine. Remember, this tower was made for spotting fires. I'll call in, the fire crew will come monitor the situation. Hashtag 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 hashtag. Shimmering waves of refracted light dance in the heat from lively flames. Moving through the glossy mahogany red branches of fire-resistant manzanita, the flames devour a grouping of mixed conifers. All that remains are charred columns encircled by fringes of outstretched, blackened limbs. It is not enough. The fire seeks more, giant sequoias, elegantly named Sequoiadendron giganteum. Receive, one by one, a smothering embrace from the capricious blaze before it hurries on. The flames do not reach as high as the boughs, only scorching the outer layers of the incredibly thick bark of the massive trunks. Its purpose has been accomplished. Blankets of embers woven from fallen needles retain warmth at the feet of the majesty.